I quietly paid my family's mortgage after my dad lost his job when my mom yelled at me and threw me out of her house. Can you imagine pouring your heart, your savings, 6 years of your life, into keeping your parents afloat, only for them to kick you out of the house you were paying for? And then, they have the audacity to call you asking why the bank is starting foreclosure? This isn't just a story about family drama, it's a story about the devastating cost of unconditional giving, and the brutal freedom that comes from finally saying, no more. I'm Michael, 29, and this whole nightmare started way back when I was a kid in a middle-class suburb outside Phoenix. My family was, well, dysfunctional. But I didn't truly grasp how bad it was until I got older, gained some perspective. My mom, Linda, was basically a walking stereotype of everything wrong with entitled women who refused to grow up. Picture this, a 45-year-old former cheerleader, who peaked in high school and never got over it. She worked part-time as a receptionist at some fancy dental office, but only because it made her feel important, superior, surrounded by wealthy clients. She'd constantly talk about the expensive cars in the parking lot, how the patients dressed. Meanwhile, my dad, Robert, was this quiet, hard-working guy who managed a small warehouse for a plumbing supply company. Good dude. But completely beaten down by my mom. She had him so whipped, he'd just nod and agree with whatever crazy stuff came out of her mouth. I never once saw him stand up to her about anything. Mom was obsessed with appearances and money, but had zero work ethic. She'd drive by massive houses in rich neighborhoods and complain, why can't we have nice things like that, all while spending $200 a week on her nails, hair, and shopping. She'd whine about being poor, yet order takeout 4 nights a week because cooking was beneath her. My younger sister, Emma, saw through the nonsense early. She basically rebelled, piercings, alternative crowd, the whole deal. Mom hated it because Emma wasn't playing into her perfect family fantasy. So, I became the golden child by default. I was good at math, had natural leadership skills. But even then, nothing was ever good enough. Get an A? Why wasn't it an A+? Make the honor roll? Tommy's mom says he's getting scholarships. It was exhausting trying to meet her impossible standards. The money fights between my parents were constant. Dad would come home tired from working 50+ hours a week, and Mom would immediately start complaining about how they couldn't afford this or that. But she'd never suggest working full-time herself. That, in her outdated mindset, was the man's responsibility. I learned early, education was my ticket out. While other kids were playing video games, I was studying, working part-time jobs. Not because I loved school, but because I knew if I didn't get out of that house, I'd end up as miserable as my dad. High school was basically me working part-time at a local restaurant while taking every advanced class. I started as a busboy, but worked my way up to assistant manager by senior year. The owner took me under his wing, taught me about business, customer service, management. Turns out, I had a real knack for it. Mom would brag to her friends about my grades and work ethic, but then turn around and complain that I was becoming too serious. I graduated valedictorian and landed a partial scholarship to Arizona State for business management. Between that, student loans, and my savings, I could make it happen. Mom's reaction? Well, at least you'll make good money so you can take care of us when we're old. Even at 18, that comment made my blood run cold. College was like discovering I could breathe for the first time in my entire life. For years of being around motivated people, professors who genuinely cared. No one constantly telling me what I was doing wrong. I studied hard, but also learned to relax, enjoy life. Made some solid friendships. Even dated a bit. I graduated with a 3.7 GPA and immediately got recruited by a commercial real estate company in Phoenix, doing property management and sales. Starting salary was $72,000 plus commission, which felt like winning the lottery compared to what I grew up with. I got my own apartment, a decent car, and for the first time, money left over after bills. I thought I'd made it out. I should have known Mom would find a way to ruin it. There I was, 23, finally living my own life. Good job, good apartment, social life. I'd drive back home maybe once a month for dinner, mostly because I felt bad for Dad. Those dinners were always the same. Mom would spend the first hour complaining about everything, her job, the neighbors, how expensive everything was, how other people's kids bought their parents nice things. Dad would just sit there, eating in silence. Then she'd start in on me. You know, Jake, now that you're making all this money, you should really help your family out more. Or, I saw Jennifer's son bought her a new car. Must be nice to have a son who appreciates his mother. The guilt trips were relentless. But I held firm. I was finally building my own life and wasn't about to let her manipulation drag me back down. Then 2018 happened, and everything went downhill fast. The plumbing supply company got bought out by some massive corporate chain that cared more about profits than people. They fired everyone over 40. Dad, at 52, had worked warehouse management his whole adult life. No college degree, outdated skills. He applied everywhere, but nobody wanted him. After 6 months of constant rejections, he was basically broken. Mom's reaction? Did she offer to pick up extra hours, maybe get a full-time job? Heck no. She immediately went into victim mode, crying about how unfair everything was and how they were going to lose their house. That's when I got the call. I was at work, showing a commercial property, when my phone rang. Mom was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Jake, we're going to lose everything, she wailed. The bank sent papers. They're going to take our house. My stomach dropped. I knew their finances were shaky, but I didn't realize how bad. How much do you need? I asked, already knowing I was about to make a huge mistake. Turns out they were 4 months behind on their mortgage, $7,200 to bring it current. Plus, they needed someone to cover the monthly payments going forward. Their house payment was $1,900 a month. With Dad unemployed and Mom only working part-time, they were bringing in maybe $1,300 total. I had about $15,000 in savings. Not a fortune, but enough to help. Here's where I messed up. Instead of just giving them a loan or telling them to downsize, I had this brilliant idea to save their dignity by working directly with their bank. I met with their mortgage rep, showed him my financials, my credit score, proof of income. We worked out an arrangement. I'd take over the monthly payments while their name stayed on the loan. The bank rep helped me set up this story about a family assistance program to explain why their payment structure was changing. My parents totally bought it. They thought the bank was just being generous. So, starting in December 2018, I was automatically transferring $1,900 every month to their mortgage company. Plus, I covered the back payments. I told myself it was temporary. Dad would find another job, they'd get back on their feet, and I could stop the payments. 6 years later, I was still paying their mortgage. You want to know what 6 years of secretly paying someone's mortgage looks like? Let me break it down. $1,900 times 12 months times 6 years equals $136,800. That's not including the $7,200 I paid up front or the occasional emergency money I'd send when they overdrew their account or needed car repairs. Let's call it an even $150,000 over 6 years. That's a down payment on a house. That's a new truck and a boat. That's financial freedom. Instead, I was living paycheck to paycheck while my parents lived in their nice 4-bedroom house, complaining about their finances, while I literally paid their biggest expense. The worst part? Mom got worse over the years, not better. Once Dad lost his job, he just kind of gave up. He'd do odd jobs, but mostly he retreated into himself, watching TV all day, barely speaking. Mom, on the other hand, doubled down on her entitlement. Since she was now the primary breadwinner with her part-time receptionist job, she acted like some kind of martyr. But here's the kicker, she also started acting like she was wealthy. New clothes every week, expensive highlights, manicures, pedicures, facials. She bought a huge 75-inch TV. A new bedroom set. Redid the kitchen with granite countertops. And every time I'd visit, she'd show off her new purchases like she was some interior decorator. Look at my new designer purse, Jake. I deserve nice things after everything I've been through. Meanwhile, she's behind on the electric bill, and I'm covering her mortgage. The comments about my life got nastier, too. When I'd mention work, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Must be nice to sit in an office all day instead of having a real job." When I started dating my girlfriend, Sarah, Mom immediately started picking her apart. "She seems plain," was her first comment. "Don't you want someone who takes better care of herself?" Sarah was awesome, a teacher, down to earth, no drama. But she wasn't some high-maintenance princess, so Mom dismissed her. The guilt trips got more sophisticated. "You know, Jake, other successful kids take their parents on vacations. Jennifer's son just took her to Europe." I started dreading those monthly dinners. 2 hours of listening to Mom complain about money while showing off her new stuff, all while I knew I was funding her lifestyle. My friends started noticing I was always broke despite a decent job. I'd turn down trips, couldn't afford to go out. The relationship with Sarah eventually ended. She couldn't understand why I was always stressed about money, why I couldn't commit to moving in together, why I spent every Sunday having dinner with parents who treated me like garbage. "It's like you're married to your family instead of building a life with me," she said when she broke up with me. She wasn't wrong. Work was the only place I felt normal. I'd gotten promoted to senior property manager, then regional manager. My salary was up to $98,000, but with that mortgage payment, I was still living like I made $60,000. I started keeping detailed records of every payment, every emergency loan, every dollar I'd spent on them. Maybe I thought I'd show them someday. Or maybe I just needed to see the numbers to make it feel real. By year 4, I was having panic attacks. Little ones at first, tightness in my chest when I'd see the mortgage payment go through, trouble sleeping after family dinners. My doctor suggested therapy. But who has time for therapy when you're working 50 hours a week and supporting your parents? The breaking point came last year. Mom started talking about renovating their master bathroom. $18,000 for new tile, a fancy shower, heated floors. "We're going to use the home equity line of credit," she announced over Sunday dinner. "It's basically free money since the house is worth so much more now." I nearly choked on my food. The house was worth more because I'd been keeping them from foreclosure for 6 years. And now she wanted to borrow against my equity to fund her renovation fantasies. That's when I realized this was never going to end. She would keep spending, keep demanding, keep taking until I had nothing left. But I didn't know how to stop without destroying the family. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. 3 weeks ago was supposed to be just another difficult family dinner. I drove over like always, stopped at the grocery store to pick up steaks, another thing she just expected. I walked into their house, bags in hand. The first thing I noticed was a brand new sectional sofa in the living room. Massive. Leather. Probably $6,000 easy. "What do you think of our new furniture?" Mom called from the kitchen. I got it on sale, but it was still a good investment. We deserve to have nice things. I bit my tongue and headed to the kitchen. Dad was in his usual spot, staring at his phone, mumbled, "Hey kiddo," without looking up. What made this Sunday different was that Mom's sister, Brenda, was there. Aunt Brenda lived in Colorado and rarely visited. Unlike my mom, Brenda had actually worked her way up from secretary to office manager. She owned her own house, drove a reliable car, took sensible vacations. Everything Mom claimed she wanted, but was too lazy to work for. Mom hated Brenda's success almost as much as she resented mine. "Look at you, Jake." Brenda gave me a real hug. "Your mom tells me you're doing so well with your real estate job, regional manager already. Your parents must be so proud." I caught Mom's face out of the corner of my eye. That familiar grimace, like she'd bitten into something sour. While I cooked dinner, Brenda chatted about normal family stuff. But I could see Mom getting more and more agitated. Her movements got sharp and jerky, slamming cabinet doors. We sat down to eat. The conversation was awkward. I was actually starting to feel bad for my aunt. She had no idea she was walking into a minefield. Then, halfway through dinner, Brenda said the words that would detonate my entire life. "Linda, I've been meaning to ask, did you guys ever get caught up on your mortgage? I remember you mentioning some trouble a few years back." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about?" Mom frowned. We had some issues when Robert lost his job, but we worked it out with the bank. Everything's fine now. Brenda looked confused. Oh, I thought Jake had mentioned helping you guys out when we talked last Christmas. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the air conditioning kicking on. A dog barking outside. The sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Mom's eyes slowly moved from Brenda to me, and I could literally see the pieces clicking together in her head. Jake did what? Her voice was dangerously quiet. Brenda realized she'd messed up. I must have misunderstood, she backpedaled. It was just casual conversation. I probably got confused. No. Mom interrupted, her eyes locked on mine. I want to hear exactly what my son has been telling people behind our backs. I set down my fork with shaking hands. After 6 years of hiding this, it was all about to come out. I wasn't talking behind your back, I said carefully. Then what were you doing? She demanded, her voice getting louder. I took a deep breath. When Dad lost his job, you were 4 months behind on the mortgage. The bank was starting foreclosure. I paid the back payments, and arranged to take over the monthly payments directly. The color drained from Mom's face, then came rushing back like a tsunami. You did what? I've been paying your mortgage for the past 6 years, I said quietly. I wanted to help, and I knew you'd never accept it if I offered directly. What happened next was like watching a nuclear bomb go off in slow motion. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, and it still doesn't feel real. The way Mom's face went through this whole spectrum of emotions, confusion, realization, embarrassment, and then pure, unbridled rage. So, you went behind our backs. Her voice was rising with each word. Made us look like charity cases to the whole family. Nobody knows except you, me, the bank, and apparently Brenda, I said, trying to stay calm. It wasn't about charity. It was about keeping you from losing your house. Our house? Mom stood up so fast her chair almost fell over. You mean the house you think you own now? Is that why you're always acting like you know better than us? Because you think this is your house? Dad finally looked up from his plate. Linda, maybe we should be quiet, Robert, she snapped. I want to hear this. She turned back to me, and the look in her eyes was pure venom. You arrogant little jerk. You think because you make good money, you can just swoop in and save us poor, stupid parents? You think we're too incompetent to handle our own lives? That's not what I thought, I protested. I just wanted to help. She laughed, but it was this harsh, bitter sound. You call lying to us for 6 years helping? You call going behind our backs and making us look pathetic, helping? You were about to lose your house. I shot back, my own anger finally surfacing. The bank was literally weeks away from foreclosing. Everything you worked for would have been gone. So, you decided to play God. Her face was purple. Decided that we were too stupid to figure it out ourselves. You couldn't figure it out. I stood up to face her. Dad's been unemployed for 6 years. Your part-time job barely covers groceries. Without me, you'd be living in some apartment right now. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Mom's hands were shaking as she pointed at me. How dare you talk to me like that? After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed, you ungrateful piece of garbage. Sacrificed? I couldn't help but laugh. What have you sacrificed? You work 20 hours a week, spend money on stupid stuff constantly, and act like you're doing me a favor by letting me pay your bills. I raised you, she screamed. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? By humiliating me in front of my sister. I repaid you by keeping a roof over your head for 6 years. I yelled back. While you treated me like garbage and acted like nothing I did was ever good enough. You want to know what's not good enough, she snarled. Having a son who thinks he's better than his family, who lies and manipulates and acts like he owns us. I don't want to own you. I was shouting now, too. I just wanted to help. But you can't accept help without making it about your pride and your ego. She moved closer, her face twisted with rage. Well, here's some reality for you, you arrogant jerk. This is my house, my home, and you are no longer welcome here. The room went dead silent. Even the background noise seemed to fade away. "Get out," she said, her voice cold and controlled. "Get out of my house and never come back. Since you think you own this place, let me make it crystal clear, you don't, and you never will." I stood there, stunned. Despite all the fighting, despite how toxic she'd become, she'd never explicitly kicked me out before. "Linda, that's enough," Dad finally said, but it was way too little, way too late. "Fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "If that's what you want." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Brenda trying to mediate. "Linda, you don't mean that. You're upset." But I knew my mother. Once she made a declaration like that, she never backed down. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. In my car, I sat for a few minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. 6 years of financial support. 6 years of putting their needs before my own. 6 years of enduring criticism and manipulation. And it ended with being thrown out of the house I'd been paying for. The drive home was a blur of anger and hurt. But by the time I got to my apartment, something had shifted inside me. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't their problem solver. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't responsible for their poor decisions. I was free. And I was about to make sure they understood exactly what that meant. That night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop, staring at my bank's website. There it was, the automatic transfer I'd set up 6 years ago. $1,900 on the 15th of every month, like clockwork. My finger hovered over the cancel recurring payment button. 6 years. $150,000. And it ended with me being called an arrogant jerk and kicked out of the house I'd been paying for. I clicked cancel. A confirmation screen popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Get out and never come back." Mom's words echoed in my head. I clicked confirm. Just like that, it was done. After 6 years of being their financial life support, I'd pulled the plug. But I wasn't finished yet. I opened up a new browser tab and started doing some research. See, I'd learned a few things about finances and property records during my years in real estate. Amazing what you can find out when you know where to look. Turns out my parents had taken out a home equity line of credit 18 months ago. Remember that bathroom renovation Mom wanted? Yeah. She'd gone ahead with it, along with new appliances, a deck, and who knows what else. They'd borrowed $52,000 against the house I'd been keeping out of foreclosure. So, not only had they been living essentially rent-free on my dime, they'd been using their fake equity to fund Mom's spending sprees. The audacity was breathtaking. I also discovered that Mom hadn't been working part-time like she claimed. According to public records, she'd been collecting unemployment benefits for the past 8 months. She'd been lying about that, too. I spent the next week in a weird state of calm. No anxiety about the upcoming mortgage payment. No dreading Sunday dinner. No walking on eggshells around Mom's mood swings. For the first time in 6 years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone stayed silent for the first week. No calls, no texts, no apologies. The silence was telling. Week 2, the messages started. "Dad, hey buddy, hope you're doing okay. Mom's still upset, but she'll come around." I didn't respond. "Dad, having some trouble with the online banking. Can you help me figure this out?" I didn't respond. Week 3, the messages got more desperate. "Dad, Jake, we really need to talk. It's about the house. Mom, I don't know what game you're playing, but it needs to stop. Dad, please call." We received some papers from the bank. I maintained radio silence. They'd made their choice when they kicked me out. Now they could live with the consequences. 3 weeks after our fight, I got the text I'd been expecting. "Dad, the bank called. They're starting foreclosure proceedings. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. This was it. The moment of truth. The house they'd lived in for 20 years, the home I'd secretly saved multiple times, was about to be taken away. And you know what? I felt nothing. No guilt, no panic, no urge to swoop in and save them again. Just cold, hard satisfaction that the consequences were finally catching up with them. I deleted the message without responding. The next day, my building manager called. "Mr. Carson, there's a Robert Carson here to see you, says he's your father." "Send him up?" I said, "Send him up. Time for the conversation I should have had 6 years ago." Dad looked like absolute garbage when I opened my door. Hadn't shaved in days. Clothes wrinkled. Eyes red and puffy. He'd lost weight and looked about 10 years older. "Jake, thank God," he said, relief washing over his face. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I know," I said, not moving to let him in. "I got your messages." He shifted uncomfortably in the hallway. "Can we talk, please?" "It's about the house." I considered making him grovel, but decided I wanted to enjoy this conversation. "Come in." He practically collapsed onto my couch, head in his hands. "Jake, I'm so sorry about what happened." "Your mother, she was out of line." "She didn't mean those things she said." "Which part didn't she mean?" I asked, settling into my chair across from him. "The part where she called me an arrogant jerk, or the part where she told me to get out and never come back?" "She was just angry. You know how she gets when she feels cornered." "Cornered?" I laughed. "Dad, I'd been paying your mortgage for 6 years. The only reason she felt cornered is because she got caught living off my money while treating me like garbage." He winced. "We know you've been helping us, and we're grateful." "Grateful?" I cut him off. "Dad, in 6 years, not once did either of you say thank you. Not once did Mom acknowledge what I was doing. Instead, she spent that whole time criticizing my life, my job, my girlfriend, everything about me, while I was literally keeping you from being homeless." I know we messed up, but Jake, they're going to take the house. We got the foreclosure notice yesterday. We have 30 days. I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. He looked desperate. "Broken." "Good. And you want me to fix it?" I said. "Yes. I mean, if you could just start the payments again, maybe talk to the bank like nothing happened. We'll make it right, I swear. Your mother knows she went too far. She's been crying for days." "Has she now?" I smiled. "And where is Mom today? Did she come to apologize?" Dad's face fell. She wanted to come, but she's embarrassed. She knows she messed up, so she sent you to clean up her mess again." "Jake, please. I'm begging you. We'll lose everything." I stood up and walked to my kitchen, grabbing 2 sodas. I handed one to Dad and sat back down. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," I said calmly. "You're going to lose the house. You're going to have to declare bankruptcy because of that home equity loan you took out. Mom's going to have to get a real job for the first time in her adult life, and you're both going to learn what it's like to live without someone else paying your bills." Dad's face went white. "Jake, you can't mean that." "I absolutely mean that." I took a sip of my soda. "See, I've had 3 weeks to think about this. 3 weeks to really examine our relationship. And you know what I realized?" He shook his head, looking like he might throw up. "I realized that for 6 years, I enabled Mom's entitled behavior. I made it possible for her to live in a fantasy world where she could spend money she didn't have and treat people like garbage without consequences. I was so worried about being a good son that I forgot to have any self-respect. But we're family." "Family?" I laughed. "Dad, when's the last time either of you asked how I was doing? When's the last time Mom said something nice about my life? When's the last time you stood up for me when she was being awful?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "That's what I thought. See, I spent $150,000 over 6 years keeping you afloat. You want to know what I could have bought with that money? A house, a new truck. Heck, I could have taken a year off work and traveled the world. Instead, I was living paycheck to paycheck while Mom bought designer purses and renovated bathrooms. We didn't know." "Nonsense." My voice was getting harder. You knew exactly what was happening. You just didn't care as long as someone else was paying the bills. Dad started crying. Full on sobbing. Please, Jake. I'm sorry. We're both sorry. Just please don't let us lose everything. You already lost everything, I said coldly. You lost it the moment Mom decided her pride was more important than keeping me in your lives. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Phoenix skyline. You know what the funny part is? I probably would have kept paying if you just treated me with basic respect. If Mom had said thank you once in a while instead of constantly criticizing me. If you'd stood up for me instead of being a coward. I'll make her apologize, he said desperately. She'll get on her knees and beg if that's what you want. It's too late for that. I turned back to face him. See, I've moved on. I'm dating someone new, a great woman who actually appreciates me. I'm saving money for the first time in years. I'm building my own life instead of subsidizing yours. Dad was still crying, but now there was panic in his eyes. What are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, I said simply. You're both adults. Figure it out. Jake, please. Your mother is scared. She doesn't know how to live without that house. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she kicked me out of it. I walked over and opened my front door. This conversation is over, Dad. You need to leave. He stood up slowly, like an old man. Jake, I'm begging you. One more chance, please. You had 6 years of chances, I said. You blew every single one. He walked to the door, then turned back. What if your mother calls you? What if she apologizes? She won't, I said. And even if she does, it won't matter. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. After he left, I sat in my apartment feeling better than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Jake, please call me. I'm sorry. I need to talk to you. I deleted it without reading the whole thing. Then another. Please don't let them take our house. I'll do anything. Delete. Another. I was wrong. You're a good son. Please help us. Delete. By the end of the night, she'd sent 15 messages, each one more desperate than the last. I deleted them all. 2 days later, I drove by their house on my way to a client meeting. There was a foreclosure notice taped to the front door, and a for sale by owner sign in the yard. I slowed down just enough to see Mom standing in the front window watching me drive by. She looked smaller, somehow older. When she saw my car, she ran outside and started waving her arms, trying to get me to stop. I didn't even slow down. In my rearview mirror, I watched her collapse on the front lawn, sobbing, and I felt absolutely nothing. 6 months later, I heard through the family grapevine that they'd lost the house and were living in a one-bedroom apartment across town. Dad was working at a grocery store, and Mom had finally gotten a job at a call center. They'd invited me to Christmas dinner at their new place. I had other plans. Some people might say I went too far, that I should have forgiven them and been the bigger person. But you know what? For the first time in my adult life, I'm truly happy and at peace. I'm engaged to Sarah. Yeah, we got back together after I got my life sorted out. I bought my own house, and I sleep peacefully every night knowing I'm not being used or manipulated. Mom still sends me birthday cards and texts on holidays, always with the same message, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I throw them away without opening them. Some bridges deserve to stay burned forever, and some lessons can only be learned the hard way, through real consequences. My parents learned that actions have consequences. And I learned that family doesn't give you the right to be anyone's doormat. Best trade I ever made in my entire life. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Or should I have continued to be their financial lifeline? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.